Um, Hello, good evening. Please, is my mic on? Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Oh, wow. Hello, good evening. Welcome. No, I was here talking without knowing that my mic was muted, so apologies. Well, anyways, just like we did yesterday, we are going to wait like extra 2 minutes. By 8:05, we'll just start and move on. Others will join us as it goes. After all, the stuff is recorded, so welcome everybody. Sha.
Sorry, I'm just joining.
Okay,
So
okay, no problem. Your mic was on. That's why I thought you wanted to talk. So moving on. Asking about those that were here during the last class, which was held on Tuesday. We also, even if you were not here, sir, we posted the take home and I think either the announcement or resources channel. So for those of us that checked it out, I don't know if we did. Please, we can just come out and say something. Let us know or hear from us how our own research went. So I don't know, from what I can remember, people that were here the last time, I don't know, does anybody or did anybody attempt to look into those things? You can just unmute your mic and speak if you have anything to say. So even if you did not attempt, if you know about it, okay, for reminder, let me also just remind us what I said. We were asked to go back and like do little personal research about lists, forms, and also learn some extra HTML tags on our own. So yeah, that was basically what was asked of us to do. So I don't know if any of us actually attempted to go through any of those things. So please, if you did, can
yes, I read something actually.
okay, please you can speak up so that we'll hear from you.
You said we should read on list other list. So they have two types of list.
Yeah,
Other list and unordered list. It's other list. I said they have two types of
yeah, I
lists.
can hear you. I can hear you. Can you? Okay. Are you done speaking or you're still?
Okay. They have ordered list and unordered list.
Okay.
Other I can't hear you, sorry.
No, I'm not saying anything. You can go on. I'm not saying. I'm listening to you. We are all listening
I
to
don't know
you.
if you're talking to me or okay. Other list uses um, OL tag. Why you list your items inside with LI. Then you can, for other list, you use UL tag. Then I also read on, where is this my sorry. Also read something on also read on strong tag quotations and addresses, address tag, quotation tag, abbreviation tag, sites, and my network is just bad.
Um, Buna, thank you very much. Actually, we were hearing what you were saying. I don't know for others, but me personally, I was hearing you very clearly. Um, so you actually spoke well. You talked. You shows that you actually did something. So yeah, there are two types of lists actually. We have the ordered list and the unordered list. So basically, the difference between both of them, as you have said, is just how the tags are. Ordered lists are created with OL tags, while unordered lists are made with UL tags. So where you actually see the difference is displaying them on the screen. You get, so ordered lists sort of like displays your lists in an orderly manner using either numbers, letters, at least what it's by the name itself ordered. So it will be like 1, 2, 3, 4 or ABCD. Why unordered list just makes use of bullet points. So you list out things with just bullet points without having to number them or order them. So yeah, I got that part, and you also made mention of the tags that you went to research on your own. You talked about abbreviation tags and some other tags. I can't remember everything because I was not taking notes. But yeah, thank you very much. But now, well done. I really appreciate the fact that you did something on your own. And yeah.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, I thought the list types are supposed to be three.
Okay, what's the third one?
Hello?
I can hear you, please.
This descriptive list,
The
like descriptive list. Descriptive, where you have the descriptive is like something like
DT,
descriptive.
yes.
Is another type of list.
okay, yeah, yeah. There is also the descriptive list, but majorly, or I'll say, let me use the word majorly. Majorly, we mostly make use of the ordered and unordered. So I'll call the descriptive type like the advanced listing, but we'll talk about that one later. So for now, we are actually going to focus on ordered list and on ordered list. Is that okay?
Okay, no.
Okay. Does anybody have any other thing to say? Welcome, Prince. Do you have anything to say? Because I think you were present for the last.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I also did research about the table tab you told us to do about. I learned about the table tab. The CR for the texting row, the TH for the header, and the TD
Okay. Okay. Nice. So.
for the table. Okay. About the description, I also learned as far as knowing how to insert from CSS to the HTML tab, like to make the colorful, the borders, other things about the table tab and the rest. So that is what I learned for the next time. Thank you.
All right. Nello. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. So you said you went to make your own research on tables and styling the tables. So well, that is something. So thank you very much. So we're actually going to just okay. Before I go on, does any other person have anything to say? So I just move on. Okay, so moving on. Basically, what was asked to what we asked to research on was lists, tables, and forms, and also learn extra tags by ourselves. So I'm not going to go into the tags because we can always still go back and learn these tags by ourselves. I've already showed us how to use or how to make use of tags, but what I'm going to just briefly browse through or skim through is the lists, table, and form. So we are going to just go through that briefly before we enter CSS fundamentals, which is actually our main course for today. So the first thing I'm going to start with is lists, and as the name implies, actually list is just if you want to list out things on your web page, you just you make use of lists. So without talking much, I'm just going to demonstrate how lists works by creating a simple list. So for those of us that were here in the previous class, this was our project file, so I'm just going to continue with it. I'm going to remove all of this for now. And talking about lists. So as I mentioned, that we're going to be looking majorly at the main two types of lists, which is the ordered and unordered. Later we're going to talk about the descriptive list, because the actual difference with the descriptive list or description lists is that those ones have lists and descriptions. So if you list out list items, you also have the description to that particular list item, but we are going to talk about that one. We are going to talk about that later. So for now, we're going to look at ordered lists and unordered lists. We'll make use of the tag UL to create an unordered list first of all. And as the first person that spoke mentioned, to create your list items, you have to make use of the li tags. So we'll write li, and this is our list item. So let's say shopping list. We'll make it an unordered list, which is ul. Then we'll now have our list items. So let's just add random things inside here. So I'm going to open this up in our browser, and as we can see, we have our list, or in this case our shopping list. So I'm now going to use this now to demonstrate the difference between ordered list and unordered list, as I have said. So I'm now going to create an ordered list below his shopping list 2, then just change this to OL, this also to OL, and when we come over here and refresh, we'll now see the difference between our ordered list and our unordered list. So this is just basically the difference, but most of the time you hardly even have to make use of them raw like this, because when you go more advanced into CSS, you'll be able to create your own list type or list style. Like for instance, instead of having bullet points here, you can now put your own special kind of character there. but that will be in later courses. This is just for us to understand the basic between lists, which are ordered lists and unordered lists. So secondly, the next I'm going to talk about is the tables. Tables which Nello had already told us about. Our tables basically, the normal table we know of, like in our Excel sheet, our tables basically consist of headers, like our table head, our table body, and you can also have a table footer or something. So to create a table in HTML, you have to make use of the table tag. So we are going to just make use of table, and this is how we create this is the basic this is the tag to create a table. So before we'll be even able to understand how table works or how to make use of tables in HTML, we need to understand how tables itself work, because tables comprises of list, columns and rows. So us understanding how columns and rows work will make it easier for us to make use of tables. So I'm just going to briefly explain the difference in a column and a row for those that confuse it, because it's very easy to confuse both of them. So our rows are like our horizontal records. Like when I mean horizontal records, like from left to right, that is horizontal records. Then our columns are vertical records, which is from top to bottom. So the way tables are, we have columns and we have rows. And in table structure or in HTML, hello, someone saying something. In HTML, what we used to represent HTML tables, what we used to represent table rows is TR, and what we used to represent table columns is TD. So I'm just going to create a very simple table here, so that to demonstrate it, instead of talking too much, so that we see how it works. So first of all, we start with creating our rows or a row. Then we can now have our columns inside the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now this is a table with 5 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then now each of these rows, we now have to put columns in them. So let's now come to this first row and add a column. We'll call it 1, 2, 3. So one row can have multiple columns. So I'm just going to copy this and paste for the rest of the rows. And if we come over to our page, we'll see that we've created our table. How tables normally shows, sometimes they show with lines and all, which that can also be included if you want to. So there is also one other tag that is used in tables, which is called the th tag, which is table head. So we can also refer to them as column headers. So each of these column items here can have headers, and to do that we still have to make use of row, because it's still a row, it's still going to be a row, just that it's going to be at the top. So now we'll now have th first column, th second column, and third column. So as you can see, the th, our browser understands it or understood it as the headers for our columns. So that is why it now gave it that's why I now give it a bold. That's why I now give it a bold styling, so that when you are looking at this table, you know that okay, this is the header for this column, and these are the column items. So I'm not going to go so detailed into tables, because it's meant to be part of what you're supposed to go back and look at. So I'm now going to now talk about the next thing, which is forms and inputs. So what forms basically are in HTML or in websites are forms are used to collect users' inputs. So we use forms on our website to collect user inputs. Example or use cases like contact us form. Maybe you go onto a website and you click contact us, you see where you are meant to put your name, your email, and the message you want to send. And apart from the contact us form, we have other most common forms like the login form, the register form. Those are used to collect your details and register you on a site or log you into a site. So I'm going to show us how these forms are created and how these forms work. So to create a form in HTML, you have to make use of the form tag, and the tag is just form. And yeah, this is your form tag. Then inside your form, you can now have input tags. Input tags are the fields itself that is provided for the user to input their details. And we have different types of input tags, which means they collect different types of information. So I'm going to create our very first input tag, which is meant to collect text information. So call this input. I'll put type as text. So sorry, I hope I did not rush that. So I created an input field and created an attribute for this input field, which is type. So this type determines the type of input you are collecting. So this is most times to restrict users from inputting wrong type of information, like where you tell somebody to put phone number, the person will go and start putting email address. So that is where this type now comes in place. So we have the text type, which allows users to only input text, to input string, both text and numbers. We have the second input type, or we have another input type, which is called number. This input type allows users to input only numbers. If you try to type in text now, the input field is not going to accept. What just happened there? Oh, wow, I don't understand the magic that is going on here, but the input field is not supposed to accept text. It accepts only numbers. So I'm typing, I'm actually clicking on my keyboard, and it's not going to accept it. But for some reason, if I click E comes out, but it comes out only once. Wow. Okay, so I'm sure we actually understand that part. We have other types of input fields here. We have email. So this email makes sure that we submit, or what we include here will be only what we put here will only be email type field. So if
when you are to calm down, let us talk.
So if sorry for the break. So you can it actually accepts text, because obviously your email is actually a text. but where it now flags error is when you want to submit it. So if you want to submit it and it checks it, and if it's not an email, it flags an error for you. So we are going to test that out later on, after talking about the different types of input fields. So other input fields that we have is we have checkbox. This is just to check. Most times is the use case for this is, let's say, select remember me. When you try to log in, you see remember me kind of thing, and this is basically what you just check it or uncheck it. So that is it for this. Then we have another type of input field, which is radio. So radio buttons come like this. So now the difference, because it's very easy to mistake or misplace between checkboxes and radio buttons. So in radio buttons, when you are given multiple options, you can only select one. So while checkbox, you can check as many as possible. So you can have checklists, like as the name implies, checklist. So you can check as many things as you want. But when it comes to radio buttons, you have to select only one. So you can have something like male or female. If you want a user to select whether he's male or he's female, you have to use a radio button, so that if the person can only select one, if the person selects male, the person will not be able to select female. If the person selects female, the person will not be able to select male. But if you make use of checkbox in that scenario, then it means the person will be able to select both male and female, and which is actually wrong information to your system. So we also need to know how to make use of these different input fields. So the last input field I want to show us, not the last, second to last input field I want to show us is the text area. Sorry, my system keeps auto-filling this. So for those wondering what auto-fills my code, it's an extension in VS Code, but we'll talk about that later. So we have text area. Text area is another input field that basically it's like text, but just that it accommodates much larger information than our normal text field. So if we see this one is actually a bit bigger. So this text area allows us to input large amount of information. So you should understand when to use this. For instance, maybe you want users to put in a long text. Most times in contact us forms, we use text areas for the descriptions. Then we use this normal text input for for name, username, and all those short texts that are needed from the users. So then the final input field I want to talk about now is the submit. So I'm still going to use input, then type. I'll call it submit. So this submit takes another attribute called value. So I'm just going to put this value, although this other one still, all input fields take value attributes, but here it's necessary for now to display what I want. So that submit value is what shows on the button. So when you create an input field and give it type submit, it shows as a button. So what this submit does is, once you click this, it submits all the information in all the fields being housed in the same form as it is. It submits it to the server or to the browser. So in this case, we're just going to test this out and see. So let me come here and put 1 2. Okay, sorry, this is number. Put this here, and we're also going to test this out because this was supposed to be emailable. I'm just going to put random text here. I'll check this, and put the random text here. So as you can see, I tried to submit and it's flagged an error. Please include Let me do that again. Please include an @ in the email address. This is missing an @ so this is an inbuilt HTML function that helps to check most of these things. So you must pass in an email here for it to work. So I'm just going to put admin@me.com, and once we submit this now, it's going to go. So that is basically what this thing does. So yeah, that is it for forms. There are different ways to submit form data, but we are not going to talk about that now. We'll talk about that later later in the future. So before I go on, or before I go into CSS, I'm just going to pause a little again and allow us, in case anybody has any question from what I've said so far, any contributions also, or if I had omitted anything, you can also talk. So before I go on, please, does anybody want to say anything?
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask.
All right.
Concerning the form.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say that all of the one you did was in a row. Is it row or colon?
Yeah, you're correct. On one
same
row.
Yeah. So in case of if it has to be on a row, how is that going to be? You have to close the form first, then open another form and then close another.
Okay. I understand your question. Okay, well, I get your question. So there are actually different ways you can make your, because I think what you're asking is how to make each of those form inputs stay on their own separate rows. So you can actually do this in different ways. One way that you can do this is to make use of break tags. I don't know if you can remember when I talked about block elements and inline elements. So these inputs elements are inline elements, so that is why they all stay on the same line. So you can make use of the BR tag, which just allows us to break. BR means go to the next line, like break that line and start from the next line. So we can make use of our BR tag and just copy all of this and put between all of them. So as you can see, they are now all on the different rows. So aside BR tag, we can also make use of the div tag. I explained the div tag in our last class also, which is a block tag. So div tags, if you wrap each of these input elements inside the div tag, it makes sure that all of them start on a new line. So that is it. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
All right, no problem. So I think that is it for now. I'm just going to move on to CSS. So yeah, I'm just going to move on to CSS, and yeah, what CSS basically stands for is cascading style sheet. For now, let's just forget the word cascading. The grammar is big. Let's look at the style sheet part. So style sheet is just like what we use to style our HTML. So with HTML on its own, HTML is just like a skeleton, a structure, but we can now use or make use of CSS to add beauty to it. So that is what CSS is used for, is meant for, and I'm going to take us through how to make use of CSS and styling our HTML pages. So first of all, we need to know how to create our CSS and how to link our CSS. So I'm going to start by creating a CSS file. So I'm going to come here and create a style.css. So yes, as I said, the extension is very important. It determines the type of file that you are creating. So make this style.css, and anything we write inside here, this is where we are going to write all of our styles for our page. So but here's one thing now, writing styles inside this file just won't reflect on your page unless you link it to that page. You get? So these things don't work like magic. You have to connect your CSS to the particular page you want it to show on. And there are 3 ways to link CSS to an HTML file. We have the first way, which is external CSS. External CSS is where you create, like this one I've just did, create your CSS file on its own, then use link to link it to your HTML page, which I'll demonstrate very soon. The second way of linking your CSS file is internally, or writing them internally. So internal CSS means you don't have to create a new file. You can just wrap your CSS and write it inside the particular file you want to style. Then we have the third type of linking on CSS, which is inline. Now what inline means is writing your particular styling, your styling in that particular element or tag that you want to style. So in our last class we made use of inline CSS, where we wrote style, where we made use of our style attributes to style a particular text. So I'm going to start from inline, then talk about internal before I now go into external. So inline CSS, I'm going to demonstrate it here, making use of, so I'm just going to create a simple div tag here and a paragraph inside, then generate a random content here. So now how to make use of inline CSS is basically just making use of the style attributes here inside the particular element you want to style. Then you now write your your property. So this is called property, then you write the value after it. So we want to style the color of this text, so make use of the color property, then we'll give it its value red. So this itself is CSS, but we are writing the CSS inline. So I'm going to come over to our browser and refresh, so we see what just happened. So as you can see, it changed the color of only this element. So we did not have to create or link an external CSS or write it internally. So this is what we call inline CSS. Now you'll be asking, what is the difference between inline and internal? Internal CSS means you write all of your CSS inside the file, but not inside the particular element. So how to write inline CSS? Now is to wrap the CSS inside style tag. So let's say, for instance, we come here and we'll make use of the style, close it, and we now write all of our CSS here. So now to make use of, since we are not writing inline CSS inside the particular element and we are writing it outside, we now need to select the elements that we want to style. So now writing CSS outside this element, we have to make use of selectors. Now what are selectors? Selectors are those things we use to select elements in our HTML page to enable us style it. So we can select elements using their tags or using their attributes. So first, and how to do that is you write the particular, you either write the tag or the attribute. So in this case I'm going to make use of p is p tag. So I want to style our p tag, so I'm going to write p. Then next I'll do an open and close braces. Then inside the braces is where I'm going to write the particular styling I want to do. So in this case, I'm going to write our property and our value. So if I refresh, if you noticed, it's not only this one that has turned red, this and this has also turned red, and that is because p selects every single p tag and gives it that style. So we did not come here, we just wrote it for this p alone, but here we created this thing we did here, actually selected every single p tag on this file and gave it this red styling. So now this is the way of selecting this, is with this is called tag. We selected it using its tag, which is p. We can also select HTML elements using classes or IDs, using classes or IDs. And I know I made mention of classes and IDs in our last class, where someone asked me the difference and how they are used. So I'm going to just demonstrate the actual use now, since we have come into CSS. So I'm going to give this a class of text. I'm going to give this a class of text. So now I can now style this, but first I'm going to remove this so we can see the actual change. So now to select classes in HTML, we make use of the full stop. We make use of the full stop, then the class name. So in this case is full stop and text, then our curly braces. Then we can now add our property and our value. And I'm going to refresh the page, and it has been affected. It has turned to red. And if you also notice again, this other two is no more red. And why is that? Because we specifically selected the element with this class. So if we now want to make all those every other text to turn red, we can just copy, give all these other text class of text. So anything we give the class of text now will turn red, no matter what it is. So let me give this list item the class of text, give this the class of text, and give this class of text. So if we notice, this is red, this is red, this is red, and this is red. So as I explained, classes are just, to select multiple elements and give them a particular style. That is what classes are meant for. Then aside classes, we have IDs. And as I said, the only difference between both are selectors, classes and IDs are selectors. The only difference is classes can be used to select multiple elements, while IDs are just specific identifiers for specific elements. So let me give something else an ID here. I'm going to come to this list item and give it an ID of item. So just like class, to select a class we use full stop, then but to select IDs we use hash and the name we use here is item. So we are going to do hash item, then curly braces, then we are going to give it color of blue, so it will be different and we would see the difference. So yeah, as you can see, this bread here has turned blue. This particular bread here has turned blue. So yes, that is how CSS basically works. CSS works basically with selectors. You just select what you want to style and style it. Like, that is basically the idea behind CSS. The only thing is you just have to learn more and more properties and values, and how to make use of all these properties to style and make your site more beautiful. So the more we go on with CSS, we'll learn how to add flesh more and more to our web pages. So finally, we've spoken about internal, inline, internal. Now I'm going to talk about external. CSS. So external
wọ́n ti gbàgbé àwọn ní class kan tí mo sign up fún.
Hello, please, your mic is on. If you just please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to talk about external CSS, which is creating our CSS as a separate file and linking it to our HTML page. So we've already created our style.css. Let me just come here and copy these styles we've already written here. Sorry, I cut it, then paste it here. So as long as we are inside a CSS file, we don't have to make use of that style tag. It's because we were in an HTML file. That's why we made use of style tag, to tell the browser that, see, once you get here, start reading it as CSS. But I'm going to remove this now, and since we are here, we don't need that tag anymore. So let me just, before I link it, let me refresh the page. Everything is back to normal. So we're now going to link our CSS. We're now going to link our CSS page to this file, so that we can see how it actually works. So now to link our CSS, we have to do that inside the head tag. So, and we have to make use of the link. We have to make use of the link tag, which is link, and yeah, I think link is a self-closing tag. Let me be sure. Yeah, it's a self-closing tag, so it does not need a closing tag after it. So the attributes you now need is the href attribute. This href attribute is now where we'll put the link to our CSS file. So now we are trying to link the style.css. So we'll write style.css here. And one other attribute the link tag takes is the real or rel attribute. So this is actually called relationship. So it's like, what type of linking is this? So here we are linking a style sheet. So when we come here and refresh, we are supposed to see all those our styles now, because we have now linked our CSS file. So for better readability and for best practice, it's better to create your CSS file separately and link them. Everything should be independent. Like when you are developing, the best practice is to have all your different types of code in different files. Have your HTML files contain only HTML, have your CSS files contain only CSS, have your JavaScript files contain only JavaScript. So like that is the best practice. Linking your CSS externally is actually the best practice. So I'm also going to talk about path and URL, because some of us will think that, okay, just writing style.css here will automatically make the system know that is style.css is supposed to link. But no, for instance, most of the time when we are developing, we usually put, so I'm going to create a new folder now and name it CSS. We usually group our projects into folders. Then I'll create another one and name it JS. We will not go into JS now, but I'm just doing this to show us how websites are created, or basic folder structure is. So once something like this is done, we now put all of the CSS files into CSS folder. So most times when you open up CSS, or when you are creating large websites, your CSS folder can have multiple CSS files in it. Your JS folder can have multiple JS files in it. So yeah, So now that we have our CSS file inside the CSS folder, no more in our root folder, if we come over to our browser and refresh, the styling does not work anymore, and that is because we are passing a wrong path here. If you pass only the file name, the system is going to browser is going to look for style.css in the same location with first.html. So style.css is not in the same location with first.html, so it does not find it, and therefore it does not render anything. But for us to be able to actually link the style.css where it is, which is inside CSS folder, we now have to make reference to that folder, which is CSS, then slash, then style.css. Get so if we now come over here and refresh, we will now see our style, and which is because the browser understand that, okay, yeah, I'll check inside CSS folder, then check for style.css. So this is it about linking CSS. Yeah, and so far, does anybody have any question before I continue?
Excuse that's recorded.
You say?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Is the class recorded? Because my network is really disturbing.
Yes, it is. The recording for the previous class was sent in the group. So after this class, the recording
I'm
for
asking if the class is being recorded.
Yes, it is. Did you hear me? Voila. Okay, so moving on, what is the time? We said we are going to try as much as possible not to make the classes so long, so we are just going to talk about one more thing before we close up for today and continue tomorrow. So what I want to talk about next is what we call pseudo selectors. So I've already made mention of what selectors are. Selectors are basically tags and attributes that HTML and CSS use to select elements and style them. So aside those selectors, we now have pseudo selectors. Pseudo selectors are like more information given to our CSS file about a particular selector that we can now use to style. So the concept of pseudo selectors is for specificity. That is what it's called, to select specifically what you want to do. So pseudo selectors most times work with both sometimes work with actions the user takes and no. So without too much explanation, I'm just going to demonstrate how pseudo selectors work. So as I said, pseudo selectors are like additional information given to CSS for a particular selected element or attribute. So when we come here to this text, we can add a pseudo selector to this place, and adding a pseudo selector, we just have to make use of the colon. So when we make use of the colon, we can now add our pseudo selector after it. So I'm going to just go through a few pseudo selectors for us to understand how this thing works. So one of the popular use cases of pseudo selectors is in our A tags or link tags. So let me come here first of all and create a link tag, and I showed us how to make use of link tags in our last class. So I'm just going to create this and put second.html second page. So let me just refresh this and we can see we have our second page here. Oh boy, sorry about that. So we have our link here. So we are now going to use pseudo selectors to style or add additional style into our a tag here. So the very first pseudo selector I'm going to show us is the hover hover. So now what this does is, or what this means is, okay, style the a tag anytime the user hovers over it. So as it stands here now, this is the color of this page, but I want to, what that pseudo selector does is, if I hover over it like this, it's going to change color. So I'm going to now put the styling of color red here, which means anytime a user hovers over an a tag, the color should change, the color of the text to change to red. So if you see, once I hover it turns to red, once I remove the mouse it goes away, once I hover it turns to red, and so that is what that does. So we also have other pseudo selectors for a tags. We have the visited. One of the most popular use cases for this visited tag is on Google search. Like when we search on Google, once we've clicked a link and come back to the search page or the result page, we'll see that that link we visited now has a different color. That is the work of a pseudo selector. So we are going to give our visited link color of green, so that anytime a user has visited a link, you should change the color to green. So as you can see, this color changed to green, which is because I clicked this link at the beginning of when I opened this file. So it means that this link has actually been clicked on or has been opened. So to just confirm this, I'm going to create another a tag and name this .html and refresh, and as you can see, it has a different color. But once I click this, we will now notice that it changes to green. So I'm just going to create a third file here, so that it will have somewhere to go to once it's clicked. So I'm just going to click this and go back, and as you can see, the color has also changed to green. So yeah, this is it about pseudo selectors, and this is how pseudo selectors actually work. And at this point, I'm going to conclude today's class, and I'm also going to give us a few take homes so that we can do a little research on our own, because we should not expect that we touch every single thing. As they said, research and knowing how to Google is a skill in programming. So we should actually go back and do some research on our own and understand. So what we are going to be doing is, I would say we should just go back and learn about more pseudo selectors, and we are still also going to post this later on the announcement channel. So we should go back and learn about more pseudo selectors. We should also go and learn about what is it called, font families. So pseudo selectors and font families. So I think font family is one of that thing I was supposed to cover in this class, which time does not allow me to. So we should go back and learn about font families and pseudo selectors. Yeah, then when we come for the next class, which is tomorrow, then we'll talk about this briefly and move ahead. So we're actually going to conclude CSS this week, which is tomorrow. We are going to talk about the remaining part of CSS tomorrow, and from next week we'll go into our separate dedicated track learning and lessons or classes. So before I round up, Does anybody have any questions from what has been said so far? So this is your time to ask or make any contribution or say anything you want to say.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for coming late. Actually, I've forgotten. I just had to, something just snapped me and woke me.
No
Okay,
problem.
I want to ask, I wasn't present at the first class, the opening class, though I've downloaded the video, I haven't gone through it.
Okay.
I want to ask, I have this programming software on my system. I want to know which particular programming software are we going to be using, because I have PyCharm or my system. I don't know if it can work with this HTML, CSS, and whatever programming we are going to be learning during the course of this bootcamp.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, so the code editor we'll be using throughout the course of this bootcamp is the VS Code, Visual Studio Code. So if you go through our first class, you see I actually demonstrated how you can download and install it. Okay, so we'll be using VS Code throughout the course of this program, basically for this first part, but we'll actually make use of, we'll introduce other softwares depending on your track. So if you are a back-end developer, you have to install other softwares as time come. If you are a front-end developer, we'll introduce you to the softwares you use as a front-end developer and all. But for this basic HTML and CSS part of the training, we are using only VS Code. So PyCharm, I think you mentioned PyCharm. That is basically for writing. I think that is an IDE. IDE is actually different from a code editor, but I'm not going to explain that in details for now. But PyCharm, I think, is basically for writing Python code. It's an IDE for Python. So we're not going to be using PyCharm. Instead, we're going to be using VS Code. So I'll advise us to go and download and install VS Code. So yeah, then for UI UX designers, well, this week will probably be the last and only time you would have to touch or take a code class. Get so yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So I think, is there any other thing from anybody else before we round up and go and rest? Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I think this is his part. Yeah. So thank you. I couldn't really join for the first class too, but I think I could grab through these sections and all that. So I wanted to ask about the distance to the software to use, but I get it. So thank you. Thank you for impacting.
All right. Well, thank you all too for attending. I hope that we attend subsequent classes, because as we advance, we will go on. So our next class will be tomorrow, the same time. Our next class will be tomorrow, the same time. So I'm saying it on time, and we're also going to post it on the group chats. We're also going to post the video of the recording for this, or the recording of this class on the channel also. So without any of that thing, I wish us all a very good night rest, and I'll see us all tomorrow. So thank you very much and good night.